For a great cup of joe, there's one thing you should know. Your morning brew can also be playful. Buff Boy Brewing guys make the temperature rise, and you surely feel naughty when you swallow our coffee. If you want some real heat, give your mouth a fine treat. You will want some more, rest assured. Buff Boy Brewing, you can't get enough of.
It's time for The Scribble, your weekly fix of celebrity chats, bizarre stories in the news, and basic random chatter with best-selling author and syndicated radio host Jeremy Bradley. Make sure your seat is in the upright and locked position and your barf bag is securely in place. Here's Jeremy Bradley.
Thank you very much, Larson. Jeremy Bradley here. This is The Scribble. Thanks for tuning in on your favorite podcast app. You know, for as long as we've been doing this show, I don't even know how many years it is now, 7 or 8, I guess, I have used this phrase countless times. Customer service ain't what it used to be. And I generally will then tell you a story about something I've experienced. It's often calling into those 800 numbers. That seems to be the most frustrating, because what used to take a few minutes on the phone to call in about whatever it was, right? Your phone bill or technical support or something. Well, technical support would take a bit longer, but even just a basic inquiry about your account, it would take maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10 if you had to be put on hold, 15 if you had to wait to talk to a supervisor and, ream them out. But now it's come to the point where it's taking forever. And I often wonder, are these people, one, fully trained to do the job? Two, are they encouraged to even help you? And three, do they even give a shit? I mean, I guess that's maybe at the end of the day, we should start out with point number 3. Because I've said before, when I worked in retail, when I had a front-facing, customer service job, that was part of the training at the very beginning. Was you stop what you're doing. If you're like, let's say a retail environment, I'm thinking of when I was an assistant manager at Party City, we would be forever, stocking shelves or putting up new displays or whatever. We didn't physically, but we would beat it into the heads of our employees. You might be halfway down an aisle, but you're also keeping an eye up front to make sure there's no customer standing at the counter waiting to pay. And it almost became neurotic. Like, you would probably spend more time walking back and forth than you were actually putting things on the shelves. But as we told our employees, that's fine. At the end of the day, that shit can wait. Like, that box can sit, in the back or whatever. That we're fine. Like, that's just extra duty. That's just stuff to, fill time. Customers are number one. I'm not saying follow them around the store and, harass them. But if they're standing at the counter, you're going and you're attending to them immediately. Immediately. There is no waiting. And if you have more than 2 people in line, and I mean that, so you got the customer who's at the register now, and then 2 people behind that. So I guess technically 3 people standing. You paged another employee. Now, if there wasn't a cashier, you would page a manager. We would come up and we would jump on the register. We were not above doing that. We didn't like doing it, but we weren't above doing it. Now, it's all the same in terms of whether you're phoning in, whether, and there are some very good customer service people, don't get me wrong. But I think it's the same sort of experience. First of all, employees aren't going to put up with your shit. And secondly, I don't know, it's either about numbers. Let's get through as many calls as possible. Let's, have as many chats, I guess, is also the thing now too. And, they just don't want to help you. And what I've found with these new remote working setups is I was going to say the call center. They're not even really a call center. They're a chat center. I guess sometimes they're a call center as well. They don't even have a supervisor they can go and talk to, right? Like when years ago, we did an undercover thing at a at a charity call center. This was for something completely different. And I got a job as a call center employee for about, not quite a week, I guess. But anyway, my point was that if you had a problem or somebody, there was an issue on the phone, you physically got up and walked across, or you'd raise your hand or something and a supervisor would come over. But now these people, basically they sit and wait in a queue just as you, the customer, do. So it's customer service has changed. It's the lay of the land now because it's remote work. It's whatever. But I have the same problem at one store. And when I start telling other people the name, I'm not going to name drop them, but when I start telling people the name of this store, this company, I'm hearing the exact same thing from all of them. And we're not going to the same location. It's the same chain, sure, but we're not going to the same location. And they all say the same thing. So I'm going to go into some customer service rants on this episode because it's going to be things that you can relate to as well. You have undoubtedly experienced these same things. Now, how do you deal with them, though, is also the question, too. Because I used to be very tolerant. Now I'm becoming short-fused in certain situations. I'll tell you more about that coming up on the Scribble right after this.
Isn't it crazy that you wait for payday, but before you know it, you're strapped for cash again? It's time to stop blowing your money and become a smart spender with the book, The Official Guide to Being an American Cheapskate at cheapskatebook.com. Learn simple ways to cut costs at home every day and during special times of the year. Don't go broke at Christmas. Don't remortgage the house for a fancy vacation. The book is filled with tips to save you money throughout the year. Check out the best-selling book, The Official Guide to Being an American Cheapskate at cheapskatebook.com or on Amazon and iTunes.
JB here, back on the Scribble, talking about customer service. You know, there's that show on A&E called Customer Wars, and it's basically people flipping out, you know, in a store or somewhere on employees, staff at a place. And it's caught on, like, cell phone cameras or security cameras or whatever. Mostly it's the looky-loos who all of a sudden whip out their phone when, you know, somebody's freaking out at the airport or something. And it's funny because, I mean, I enjoy watching it, but you also, sometimes you feel bad for the employee on the receiving end, and then other times you're kind of like, well, at the same time, maybe if the employee was a little bit nicer. Now, I'm not saying, let me be clear on this, I'm not saying that physically attacking an employee is the right thing. I'm not saying that at all. Don't write me and say, but as I was just saying in the introduction, though, like, there's a part of me that kind of understands why people are at their wits' end for certain things. Now, I have always been quite patient, and I'm also a talker, and my mouth can get me in trouble, and it can get me out of trouble. I'm not one of those people who is, like, screaming and yelling in the store. I'm certainly not doing that. And same thing on the phone. I can choose my words carefully that can pack a punch. Now, I'm not insulting and saying, you know, oh, you're stupid, you know, you're useless. Get me somebody better who can, you know, speak English. I'm not doing that. But I can, if I'm not getting help or if I'm asking a question and it's not getting answered, also that's part of my journalism training, is I will call you out and say, well, you're not actually answering my question, so let me ask you again. You know, I'll be like that. So there's one store that I go to. It's a discount store because you know, we get you know, you get your plastic or your paper plates if you're going, you know, we pick up, you know, party supplies or whatever it is. It's cheap stuff. Or if we need more, like, tape or staples or something, you know, for around the house. Dog treats, I guess, would be another one, or snacks even. It used to be decent to go there, and it's one of the stores that has a self-checkout. That's a whole other issue. But now what I'm finding, and I go there maybe once a week, I guess, I almost feel my blood pressure rising as I'm approaching the store, just because now I'm trained, now my head, my body, whatever, is trained to expect a bad experience. And so now I'm in a pissed off mood just going in there. I haven't even stepped foot in the store, haven't even walked in yet, but I'm already pissed off because of what I'm expecting to happen, because it happens every fucking time. So it partially is about that self-checkout thing. It's also partially about the staffing of the store. So this started out, now I think because they're also starting to recognize me, maybe I'm getting a harder time when I go in. But the self-checkout is obviously a big debate for people because, you know, we don't work at the store, we're not being paid to do it. So, and then there's also debates on that is, okay, if something doesn't scan properly, whatever, does it just go in your bag? I'm going to be compensated for my time for doing work here. So you know what? I'm just going to steal it and I'm going to take it and it's mine. It serves them right then for not helping me, not watching me. Okay, so I understand that argument too. Again, I'm not condoning stealing, but I'm just saying. And so that's where I have this rule, and I've talked about it on the show, where I will wait in line for a cashier to do the job, to ring me through, you know, bag my stuff, whatever. I will not wait in line to ring my own things through. I won't. So what I do is I will go somewhere in the store and I'll find another employee, because that's where, as I was mentioning about stocking shelves or whatever, well, no, that might be what your task is right now. At the end of the day, customers are waiting to pay. That's money in the bank, because if I drop my basket of however much stuff, that's money literally walking out the door. Right? That's a sale that you're not getting. Now, you could also, people will argue and say, well, if the shelves aren't stocked, you wouldn't be able to shop and buy stuff. Well, okay, here's the thing though, right? I mean, it's a couple minutes that you're going to jump on a register. So I will go and I'll get an employee and say, we need more cashiers up here. They'll reluctantly, come and do it. And they'll, ring people through. But I'll do that when there's a lineup. If there's a lineup and then you've got somebody who's just directing people to self-checkout, no, that doesn't work for me either. I need another. You've got a row of 4 employee cashier or cash stations, cash registers, and only one of them open, and 17 people in the store stocking shelves, standing around talking, whatever it is. So I will go bust up their little chat party and say, come on, cashiers up front, let's go. And so the other day, and it's happened a few times, quite a few, that when I go and make them come up and start working and ringing people through, I will go to that cashier then, and I'll put my basket or whatever on the counter, and I've got my canvas bags, my shopping bags. They'll ring it through, and then they just leave everything on the counter when the transaction is over. And so I'll say, oh, my bags are right there. And then sometimes they'll end up bagging it for me because it's like, well, wait a second, you have your little, I can see on the other side of the counter, there's that little bag holder thing. So you would do this if I was going to be paying for a shopping bag, right? So now just because you're pissed off at me, you're not going to do it? That's how we work customer service now, is because you're mad at me, you're not going to do the job. Well, that's also a problem, right? It doesn't matter if I say hello, if I'm nice to you, whatever. The bottom line is if your role is to bag the groceries or whatever it is that I'm buying, then you're going to do it. Not because you're not going to just not do it because you're pissed off at me. That's not how it works. So they will then go and reluctantly do it. Now, the other day, there was one cashier, and then there was nobody manning or directing traffic at the self-checkout. She was having to run back and forth. And I was just like, there's a lineup for both. There's a lineup for her to ring people through, and there's a lineup for people waiting to use self-checkout. Now I'm on a mission. I'm going through the store. I'm looking. Not one employee even on the floor. This would have been, now if you're a shoplifter, again, I'm not condoning stealing. If you're a shoplifter though, this would have been prime for you to walk out with a ton of stuff. You could have just been filling your bag and walk right out, because that one employee... Now, and why I'm saying this is because it's also not fair to the employees, right? Because you're going to have people who are pissed off at that employee, even though it's not her fault. She didn't make the schedule. She doesn't, have... Maybe people are on break. Maybe they're fooling around in the back. Who knows what they're doing? She's getting the brunt of it. So it's not her fault. I'm not saying that. But, you almost just kind of look at the manager then and go, well, why is that happening? Why would you even put your people through that? That's just not fair. That's not even, So I'm looking, there's no other employees in the store, and then I go to the back where it's got the little sign on the door that says employees only. I go and open that door, and an alarm goes off. Like a security, like when there's the emergency exit door is pushed somewhere, and then there's the roo, 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 roo. That's what happened when I opened this door. I thought, oh my God. And there's 3 girls standing back there, or 3 young females standing back there. And they were like, talking and laughing, whatever. And I said, cashiers up front. And so one of the girls said, oh, well, we were just taking out the garbage. And I was like, 3 of you? And it's like 2:00 in the afternoon? Really? Is this when you do that? Okay. Well, either way, you're done now. I see you in the building here. So, up to the front. Only one of them came. And I was right behind her. And I said, how many employees are on right now? And she said 5, but one's on lunch. I said, so there's 3 other people, which I just saw 3 of you. Nobody's on the floor. Nobody's on the floor right now, even putting out stock, helping, doing anything. Is that really, what are your roles supposed to be right now? Is just, you're all doing janitorial in the middle of the afternoon. So she eventually comes up. She does the register. I happen to be then the next customer in line because by that point the line had cleared. And maybe everybody had already just run out with their stolen stuff. So she starts ringing me through, and same thing. She just rings it all and then pushes it all back onto the counter. And I said, my bags are right there. And she's like, she didn't do anything. She was just kind of, she started to walk away. And I said, no, excuse me, my bags are there to put my stuff in. And then this is where she sort of took attitude with me. She's like, oh, well, we weren't supposed to bag during COVID. And I said, that's fine. What's the excuse today, though? Oh, well, they told us that we weren't supposed to during COVID. Right, I heard that. But what's, okay, so it's now March or whatever, let's... we just forget sometimes. And I thought, oh, okay. I mean, so you don't instinctively see somebody's bag on the counter and go, oh, I should bag it now. I mean, it's not like it's a bad habit that you've just broken, for so long. So then she reluctantly does it, throws my stuff in, doesn't do it very nicely at all, and then kind of, pushes the bag towards me, and that was it. Then, a couple days later, go back, same sort of a thing where there's nobody else up there, and I'm just like, come on, let's get some employees up here. So then, same deal is I put my bags on the counter, she's emptying the basket, I say the same thing about bagging my stuff, and then she pushes the basket, though, and says, oh, and that gets returned to the front. And I thought, I was almost speechless for a second, and this is where I'm the bad guy, I looked at it, I was at, fuck off. And I walked out. Just because, again, you're mad at me because I've made you come up and help bring customers through, which, again, when you're a retail employee like that, I understand in a big box store or something, you might have people that are from certain departments, or there's not, some person might be a tech support person and not a cashier. I get that. But in this store, like I said, it's basically a dollar store. I mean, you're wearing the green smock. I mean, you know how to work the register. So you're going to be pissed off at me because I made you come up here, and then you're going to give me attitude for making you do your job. Like, that's just not... See, this is where we have an issue. And now it's that full circle moment where the customer's pissed off, the employee is now she's not going to take your shit, and it's just, now it's this full circle moment. It's no different than politicians, right? We always hear about politicians are getting harassed and threats and whatever, but I know from firsthand experience that when I've reached out to my elected officials and I don't hear from them, no, excuse me, it is your job to get back to me. It is your job to answer my emails and take my phone calls and call me back if I want, if that's what I'm asking. I'm your boss. And so... why do people not like politicians? And why are politicians getting threats? Why do politicians hide out from people? Well, if you change that relationship and you change the way each other, we wouldn't hate, if I wouldn't have this resentment towards my elected official if they didn't do that to me. I don't know them from a hole in the ground. So I'm going into this neutral anytime we get somebody new elected into office in my neighborhood. Right? I don't know anything about them. But if I have that first interaction and I don't hear back, or I leave a message and I'm basically being screened, and it's like, no, excuse me, have her call me. I'm not dealing with all these gatekeepers and I'm going to have to be screened. No, have her call me. Have her call me. This isn't even do you know who I am? I am Jeremy Bradley from the radio and the newspaper and all. No, this is just, I'm paying her salary. So I have an issue I want to talk to her about. Have her call me. That's her job. And when she doesn't, what ends up happening, right? Then you thrash her on Twitter. You send a nasty email and say where, and then of course she's not going to call you back because you're aggressive. And it's just that full circle thing. So same thing with customer service, where you're going to shove the basket at me and tell me that it goes up front. No, I'll tell you where to put the basket, lady. That's the deal here. Not only did you're pissed off because I made you ring it up, I made you bag it, which let's rewind a couple years and go, that was your job entirely before. I remember going to a grocery store when I was a kid, and I remember they had the conveyor belt thing or whatever you call it, and I remember it seeming really odd that the cashier would just scan and then put it on the belt, and then it would go, and my mom would end up having to, first of all, pay for a bag and then bag it herself. Like, that was just a foreign concept to me as a kid. I thought, that's really weird. Like, I didn't like going to that store at that point. I thought, why don't they do it for you? And now it's just, it's the expectation. You can even put the bags right in front of them and they'll just, push it back to you as then here, do it yourself. And that doesn't work for me. So now, speaking of calling in for customer service, I've got some stories about that coming up on the Scribble right after this.
Ever had something to get off your chest but never had the balls to say it? That's a load of crap. Speak Free with JB.com is exactly what you've been waiting for. Your chance to tell it like it is and not care what anybody else thinks. Have your say on issues of the day. Join newspaper and radio columnist Jeremy Bradley as he tells it like it is. Hundreds of thousands of people have stopped by, including some well-known celebrities who have had a chat with JB and speak candidly about what's really going on in the world. You can join them too. Have a rant or a rave. Be brave and head on over to www.speakfreewithjb.com now.
It's never too early to start thinking about your next holiday. Have you checked out Mexico recently? From tequila tasting, swimming with horses, to ziplining through the jungle and watching whales and dolphins in their natural habitat, Puerto Vallarta has it all. Visit mexico.jbonair.com to see all the fun PV has to offer. That's at mexico.jbonair.com for hundreds of photos, interviews, and videos from around the tourist hotspot. Check out mexico.jbonair.com for all the fun. That's mexico.jbonair.com.
JB here on The Scribble. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Customer service ain't what it used to be. It's almost it's not my favorite saying because I actually hate saying it, but it's certainly, like, I'm getting to the point now where if I have even just a minor issue, I'm just not even going to bother. I'll just deal with it because I don't want to have to go through the hassle. So a couple weeks ago, I was renewing my cable TV, internet, and phone plan with my provider. And I shared the story where it was 2 hours and I had to use almost every communication platform possible. So I tweeted them, DM'd them, online chat, and a phone call. And this was all, let me just tell you, this was all just to add a couple of channels to my plan, some TV channels to my, cable plan. Then they told me that my 2-year package or whatever was up for renewal. And then that was kind of like, well, we've got this, we've got that. And I said, no upgrades. I'm not even doing that because I already know this is you're going to be an upsell swindler. I'm not falling for it. And I will say right off the bat, I am not paying any more than what I'm paying now at the end of this call. If anything, my bill will be the same or it will be lower, but I'm not paying more. So if you're going to try to upgrade me to like digital this and wireless this and whatever, faster this, no, it's not happening. I have what I have right now. I like it. We're good to go. And that wasn't good enough for them because now, wow, we've got this digital one, we've got wireless. No, that's not what I'm saying. And so here's what's going to happen is we're going to start hacking away at the services that I have with you then. You're not going to listen to me when I tell you right up front. Don't tell me anything. I don't want more. I don't want more. I don't want faster. I don't want whatever. And so at that point, I change the conversation and say, all right, let's start ticking away here. What's the speed of internet that I have right now? Oh, blah, blah. I said, great, let's knock it down one notch. I don't need the fastest. Oh, well, then you're not going to be able to stream and blah, blah, blah. I said, I don't do that anyway. So that's fine. Knock it down. And then we start walking through all the different TV channels that I have. And so my husband, I guess, had some movie ones or sport. I said, we don't even watch those. Let's cut those. Done. There we go. Let's knock off. And that's what, like I said, the original thing was for me to add a couple of channels to the plan. And because it just went so sideways, where the chat people weren't helping and this and that and whatever, look at what ends up happening over the course of, actually, I think it ended up being almost 5 hours because I had to wait for somebody to get back to me. And there was this and I was on hold and yeah, so by that point I was like, good, here we are. Let's start reducing service now. So you guys just did a 180 on this call because I was actually wanting to pay a little bit more because I wanted something else. And they also, you give them an inch and they take a mile. That's what it was. It was, I want a few more channels added. Oh, well, we've got this and this and this. That's not what you're not listening to me. That's not what I want. And so my bill ends up becoming lower because now I'm downgrading services. That's what ended up happening. Now, there's a drugstore in my hometown, and I'm also a regular customer of the post office that's in the. So I'm not a shopper of the actual store itself, but at the back of the store there's a post office. There's a postal outlet, and so I have to go there quite regularly. And I know the gals that are at the counter, and we have a good laugh. I've been going there for probably about 4 years now, and they don't have the best coverage in terms of somebody going on lunch and then having to fill in for an hour or whatever. And the lineup is crazy. People are just pissed off. And like I said, because I'm there every day, I know that this is a regular occurrence. But if you're just going there for the first time, it's just a bad experience all around. So the other day I was in line, and I also feel bad, going back to that, feeling bad for the employee who's on the front lines because people are pissed off at her, telling her off. And it's like, well, she doesn't make the schedule either. She's just an employee. So, and because I deal with them all the time, I do sort of feel bad because I know them in a sense. And so when I was standing in line, I basically called the store and I said, hi, I want to talk to the store manager. But the problem, what happened though, was when I was calling, whoever was up front or whoever was answering the phone kept picking up but pressing the hold button right away. So nobody even said, thank you for calling, blah, blah, blah. I just kept getting put on hold. And then the music over and over and over again. And I thought, this is ridiculous that I'm in the store. I can see that, it was sort of busy at the post office, but up front, is this just somebody doesn't want to take the calls? Like, I don't understand why it's happening. It took 9 minutes of being put on hold, put on hold, put on hold. Finally, somebody comes on. How may I direct your call? Store manager. Store manager. Oh, well, he's not in today. Then get me whoever manager. Get me whoever's there. And he comes on the phone, and I said, I need somebody at the post office to cover because there's a lineup. People are pissed off. This happens every fucking day. I didn't say that, but it happens every day. Your employee is getting her face ripped off by these people. That is not fair. Get up here. Somebody get up here. If you're the store manager or you're the manager on duty, you should know how to be a post office employee then. Because they're not actual, the employees that work at that postal outlet are not employees of the postal service. They are employees of the store. So they are employee of that drugstore. They just happen to work at the postal outlet, right? So it's not like I'm telling off a actual postal employee. These are retail employees who happen to just man that station, if you will. And so he's like, well, there is nobody. I said, well, you're the manager on duty, then you jump in. You help her out. Oh, well, I don't know how, blah, blah. I said, okay, well, this is not going to work. I said, I want to leave my name and phone number for the store manager to call me when he's in. And I'm going to talk to him because this is happening all the time. And that's not fair to these people. Well, what's coincidental is my cousin he works at the corporate office of that company. And so once I found out the store manager's name, I texted my cousin and I said, do you know so-and-so? And he's like, he's an asshole. I'm like, okay, good. We're going in. We're going in for this. So the guy did not call me back when he was in. So I ended up just calling again. Now, here's what happened when I called from our office. I called from this studio, from our radio studio. I wanted to record from the very beginning because I thought if it was 9 minutes when I was in the store, let's see how long it's going to go. So I hit record when I was sitting at the desk. I was on hold. They kept putting me on hold. Music, 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 ring, 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 and then music, 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 ring, 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 music, music. An hour and 40 minutes. So what I did was on our other phone, because we have a bunch of phone lines here, on the other phone line, I called and I went through to the pharmacy. I didn't go for customer service. I ended up pressing for pharmacy. That answered almost right away. So I said, store manager, please. Then I get the guy on the phone and I was like, hi, I left you a message the other day. I haven't heard from you. But you know what? On my other line, and I conferenced it in, I said, I keep getting put on hold, and this has been an hour and 40 minutes, and I have it all recorded if you'd like. I spent an hour and 40 minutes narrating, talking, just reading reviews online. And so I was pissed off because, first of all, you didn't call me when you were supposed to, and now I've had to wait to speak to you again. And I'm having this conversation with him, and I said, I'm reading all of your Google reviews online. Your store has a 2.5 rating on Google, 2.5 out of 5. So half. You have a half rating, basically. And he said, oh, well, I know when I hear the complaints, I hear that there's problems with the phone, so I call in and blah, blah. I said, but then what do you do about it? What have you done about it? I said, the postal outlet. I said, the poor girls have an hour where they have to cover each other's lunches, and there's a lineup and people freaking out on them every day. I said, those are your employees. It comes, the morale of your store comes from the top. It comes from you. Well, we're limited in terms of staffing hours, blah, blah. I said, don't give me that. Don't give me that. Because I saw 3 people in your store standing around talking the other day. So you can cross-train people. That's up to you. They're your employees. If you want to train somebody, what happens if they're sick? You're just going to close the post office today? You can't do that. So then, after a bit of conversation, I asked him, I said, what would you rate your store out of 5? And he said, maybe 1 to 2. I almost hit the floor. I could not at least give yourself, a 3 or a 4. That's you saying the store you're in charge of, the one you're, leading, you're giving a 1 or 2. You gave it less than the people tearing it apart on Google. I couldn't believe that he said that. And the bottom line was, this was all being recorded, and I did tell him that right from the very beginning. I said, I've got this all on tape. If you want to hear how long I was on hold and what happens, I will play it for you if you want me to play. And Yeah, knowing it's being recorded, you're going to tell me that you give it a 1 to 2 out of 5. I was mind blown, ladies and gentlemen. I could not believe that I was hearing that. That was so ridiculous to me. So, we're out of time. I've got to wrap this up. Tell me your nightmare customer service stories. Send me an email live at jbonair.com. Live, live at jbonair.com. Back on the Scribble right after this.
We hear you chirping. Get scribbling. Tweet up the Scribble at The Scribble Show. Join the discussion with Jeremy Bradley. It's all going down right now on Twitter at The Scribble Show and at thescribbleshow.com.
Jeremy Bradley here on The Scribble. We are out of time. Thank you so much for once again listening to my customer service rants. I think I could almost make an entire series out of it, right? Again, send me an email live at jbonair.com, live at jbonair.com. I will talk to you same time, same place next week. Bye-bye for now.
Want more Scribble? Check out thescribbleshow.com for past shows, celebrity interviews, cheapskate tips, and more. That's at thescribbleshow.com and on Twitter at The Scribble Show. The Scribble is a speak-free media presentation.
If you want some